Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our very first webinar. My name is Andy Kevany, and I'm the president of Highlands Council of PTAs, and I'm also the parliamentarian for Los Angeles 10th District PTSA, and also part of California State PTA Family Engagement Commission as a consultant. Leslie?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Leslie Menjivar. I'm the 10th District President. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Andy, for this great idea of the DEI webinars. And welcome, everyone. Bienvenidos a todos.
And we do have a Spanish interpreter, Alex. Leslie, if you can please announce that they just need to click on the globe.
Si necesitan interpretación, apriete al círculo, al mundo que está ahí y seleccione español, por favor.
And we also have an ASL interpreter. If you again go on the globe and click on American Sign Language, and you should be able to access it. Thank you. Let me share my my screen because we will be introducing Marilyn. But first, let's let me do the slideshow. Sorry about that. So our first webinar, we're going to talk about exploring inclusivity gaps within your PTA in your school and a step-by-step guide in making real progress. And Marilyn will actually go through a lot of the issues and not problems, but and certain maybe difficulties that as PTA leaders or community leaders that we actually have to encounter. And hopefully that you will walk away with some solutions and some ideas on how to actually make your PTA more inclusive. We will start with the land acknowledgement. And this is in respect of our ancestors that have been living in the Los Angeles Basin and part of Channel Islands. The Highlands Council of PTAs acknowledges our presence on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Kizh Gabrielino people and their neighbors. The Los Angeles Basin and Southern Channel Islands were regions that were cared for by their ancestors for thousands of years and continue to be called home today. Indigenous stewardship and rightful claims to these lands have never been voluntarily relinquished nor legally extinguished. We pay our respects to the families, members, and elders of these communities, past, present, and emerging, who live here today and continue as stewards, caretakers, and advocates of these lands, river systems, and the waters. As PTA leaders, we undertake an obligation to work together towards undoing the intentional erasure of the native peoples and their culture and presenting truthful facts about our school's specific occupation of these Kizh Nation lands. We encourage learning the truth about their history and committing to working together towards greater understanding, advocacy, and solidarity. We would like to introduce to you Marilyn Cachola-Lucy. Marilyn is the 2023-2025 Vice President of Health and Community Concerns with California State PTA and was the 2020-2021 Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Chairperson for California State PTA. Marilyn Cachola-Lucy is currently the Vice President, and I already announced that. Her DEI work is informed by training through intercultural development inventory, Race Forward, Courageous Conversations, ACES Aware, and Radical Transformational Leadership. She has developed informative DEI workshops for PTAs and other organizations. Marilyn is a lifelong learner and continues her DEI professional development through the Othering and Belonging Institute at Berkeley and the Gender Spectrum Conference at St. Mary's College. She has worked previously as a public school special education teacher, program director of a pediatric medical therapy and early intervention clinic, and special education advocate. She has also been a legislative advocate and community organizer for ACLU on privacy, protection, and justice reform campaigns. She has been a first 5 commissioner since 2015, is an advisory board member to Help Me Grow and the Family Economic Security Partnership, a commissioner for the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, and a PFLAG board member. She lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with a remarkably neurodiverse family and currently works as Deputy Director for California State Assembly member, covering education, health, mental health, women's issues, and other policy areas. She designs internship and community training programs and is currently working with partners on a non-degree apprenticeship programs as a means to economic development. Please welcome Marilyn. And I'm going to stop share.
Thank you so much. I sound so impressive.
Very impressive.
But really, I'm just like you. Everyone here gives back so much to your community in your many different ways. So thank you so much for being here. Anvi, this has been a beautiful example of inclusivity. You have Spanish interpretation, you have ASL interpretation, you provided respect with your land acknowledgement. It really is chef's kiss for DEI. So it's my pleasure to be here, and I hope that we can engage in really good conversation. But I'd like to start with a presentation just to get everybody on the same page. And it'll take about 25 to 30 minutes. And then I'm hoping we can really learn from each other through questions and answers. So if you're ready, I am going to share my screen and we'll get started on the presentation. Okay, I believe that you can see it now. Anvi did introduce it. We are going to look at inclusivity gaps. And I just want to say something off the bat. If you're here, I know you want to, or you've tried to really move the ball forward in terms of diversity and equity and inclusion. Sometimes our desire and our wish to do that falls short, and we find ourselves in the same place because the process to really move things forward has to be formal, intentional, and data-driven. Hold on, it's not advancing. Okay, so let's start by the PTA mission and values. This work, our conversation, is going to be rooted in our values as PTA. On the screen, you see our national PTA mission and values, and then also our California PTA mission. But you'll see that we are all about empowering children and families, all, not some, all. So in any type of conversation where we are discussing equity, we're discussing changing behavior, we're discussing challenging things that we've been doing for many, many years, I always like to preface it by saying, let's all agree to some behavior norms. Because in the Q&A, the language that you use, how you read and listen will ultimately help us either to stay open to one another and learn, or we will close off and we won't learn from each other. So I may be presenting this information, but really it's going to take all of us to learn and do better together. Okay, what are the objectives of this presentation? Number one, we're going to talk about what a gap analysis is and how to accomplish one, concrete steps, not theory, but real examples. Number two, in order for us to make progress, you have to collect data, and that I'll show you why and how it's used throughout this presentation. And then finally, the things that we discuss, the things that I am covering in this presentation, you will be able to apply to your unit's goals. Okay, so why do we want to do what's called a gap analysis? A gap analysis isn't something I've made up. It's something that businesses have used for many, many years, and other sectors have used it too. And so basically what it is it's a tool you can use for improvement. So in PTA, we set goals at the beginning of the year. Sometimes we meet them, sometimes we don't. But oftentimes in my experience, when I'm working with a PTA that wants to make real change, the first thing I ask is, okay, what's your goal? Where do you want to get? How are you measuring that? Because if you don't know how to measure your goal, you won't know if you're making progress. So the gap analysis is a way for us to number one, identify your goal. Number two, identify whether you've met it or not. And if you didn't, why not? And what should you try next? And if you do a good gap analysis and you allow it to really inform what you do next, it results in great things. It can result in higher member engagement, higher diversity in your leadership, but also when your community sees you actually doing this, it increases their faith and their respect for the PTA and the PTA brand. Okay, another big why of why we do a gap analysis is it helps us to get closer to the things that we believe in. And part of this is National PTA has many resolutions and position statements that tell us this is what we believe as an organization. California PTA does too. Here on the position statements are the National PTA position statements, but you can see it's all about inclusivity. It's calling out systemic and institutional racism and how do we respond. The rights and services for undocumented children. It's all about citizenship and equality, as well as, representative educational materials and books, and inclusion of students with disabilities. So how do we do that gap analysis? Number one, we have to talk about a goal. You can't do a gap analysis on an idea. It has to be a stated goal, and we have to review how we measure it. Number two, all of this is based in data. You have to have good data or good measurements so that you know how to work with this goal and move forward. For example, if we had a goal to increase the representation on our leadership board, unless we are actually marking and noting, okay, our leadership at this point in time has this many women, this many men, this many from, who are, that qualify for free and reduced lunch, this many who don't. We have these different races and ethnicities. We have abilities, different gender identities, different orientations, et cetera, et cetera. So Anvi shared with me a beautiful document that has so much information that I think any of you could use. So if we talk about that goal of increasing diversity and representation in our leadership, we need to know what our communities are made up of, what the composition is, so in order for us to know if we're representative or not. For example, if we have a community that is 50%, I'll use myself for example, if the community is 50% Filipinos, and yet your leadership board maybe has 1 out of 20, is it representative? I think you know the answer, right? But unless we are measuring it, we collect that information, which is what we call data, we won't know if we're making progress, okay? So once we get that data, we can use it to inform what we do next. 1 out of 20 is not a good representation. Okay, what do we do now? There's additional things that you can do to get good information to give you an idea of how you can improve. And then once you have that good idea, there's a process that you try it out in a small group and you get feedback and then you tweak it. You try it out in additional groups, you get feedback and you tweak it. And then when this idea or program goes through different iterations, then it's good to roll out. And that's how you can help yourself be successful. And I'll explain more in detail. Okay. So when we're talking about data, it's information, right? There's 2 types of data. Fancy word, quantity, usually measures like surveys, statistics. It's information that usually has a number associated with. 10% of our population is X, but only 1% of our leadership board is X. Statistics, surveys, you're gathering information. I think sometimes when PTAs have a registration, they may ask you a few questions and they're gathering data. Hopefully that data is used to decide if they are providing the services that their PTA members want. That's a common example. Now, other than surveys and statistics, there's qualitative data or information. This is where I think it's even richer. So if you have your statistics, 10% of the community is Filipino, yet only 1% of your leadership or your membership is Filipino. I'm going to go out and have those conversations. I'm going to go out and have maybe interviews with people in the community, focus groups, to ask questions about, why don't you join PTA? Is it something, what would make you join PTA? What would you want to see first in order for you to join PTA? So these types of questions, these types of conversations are really important. You cannot get all that data, all that good information from just surveys. You have to go above and beyond. Okay, here's an example. So at one of our schools, when I was a council president here, we had one of our schools have an incredibly high, in fact, majority membership of South Asians. But the PTA was primarily led by white, parents and community members. And we didn't understand why, with such a high population of South Asian families who were very invested in their children's futures and education, we weren't getting more engagement. So what did we do differently? Okay, we had a goal, and it was to increase the number of South Asian and dual language members by the total count. Like if we had, 800 members, we wanted, and only 100 were South Asians, we wanted that to be increased to at least half, right? But then also the level of engagement. How many programs did they attend? How many times did they reach out to ask for, for information? Tracking those things actually will help you to define whether or not you are making progress. Okay, so what we did is we started to have interviews with members in the school community, South Asian families, South Asian teachers, etc. And so through these interviews, what we found is they didn't agree always with the programming that came out of our PTA. And I'll give you an example. At the PTA, there was a competition. If your classroom, I think collected the most number of whatever it is that they were collecting, or you raised the most amount of money, or you brought in the most number of canned goods, then that classroom or that student would be able to put a whipped cream pie in the principal's face, right? Some people thought that was going to be fun, that was going to be funny, right? Who wouldn't want to be motivated by getting to do that to your principal, and your principal was willing to do it in good fun? Well, can you imagine if you come from a culture where your teachers and your principals are high authority figures, they're very well respected? As a parent, would you want your child to be able to do that? No chance, right? And so we found that some of the programming that were motivating for certain sectors of the community was not for this sector of the community that we were wishing to engage. So we had to take a look at our programming. Number two, the way that we were having our meetings did not fit the family culture of our South Asian families. They like to have dinner all together. They, so if the meeting was going to be at 5 or 6 at night, it needed to include the family. And so what we did was we had dinner, and the whole family was invited to come. And the children would have activities to do while we were doing a business meeting for PTA. That really increased the engagement for people to come and be a part of our PTA meeting and programming. The other thing is, excuse me while I move this. The other thing that we learned is that within every quote ethnicity or race, there are multiple intergroups, right? Not everybody is the same. So, for example, what I learned from our Latino or Latin American members is that being El Salvadoran is very different than being Mexican, and it shouldn't be, washed over and think because you have a common language that your cultural preferences and priorities and traditions are all the same. They're not. Okay, but that kind of information we would not have received or uncovered if we didn't go the extra mile of having interviews, one-on-one interviews, 1-on-2 or 3 interviews, like small focus groups, etc. So when we got all of this information, that helped us to decide what to do, right? We took this information, and as a PTA board, we then made adjustments. We changed the kind of programmings to be culturally respectful for all of our communities, to check in with a lot of our different ethnic groups and families, to make sure that we were not accidentally doing something that was going to cause some disruption or disconnection. Okay. Another thing that we discovered and we changed is that in PTA we follow parliamentary procedure, right? For a reason. We believe, based on the things that we know and based on how PTA was established, that this is a good and democratic way to make sure everybody has a chance to participate. So let's hold there. If the outcome or the objective is to make sure that we're being fair, and that's what parliamentary procedure is supposed to do we need to use all that information, all those languages? I mean, the language phrases. Do we need to be so formal? Or if we use them, can we also pair them in a way that is more approachable? I move to approve the carnival, which also means that we are making a suggestion that we decide as a group to move ahead with the carnival, right? That kind of language can be very exclusive. So if you can imagine, if you're with a community where, number one, there's not a lot of formal education, number two, multiple languages are happening, that kind of formal technical language is a barrier. And there's nothing that tells you have to stick with that formal language, as long as you can follow that process to be fair. You can pair it. I move to, it just means that we're suggesting this is a good idea and we're gonna discuss it, right? So once we made those adjustments or we had those ideas, a way to increase our chances of success is that we rolled it out to a small group at first. Okay, so the PTA friendly South Asian community leaders, we said, we want to try this. What do you think, right? And they helped us to decide this is what you should do instead. So into a larger group, we say, we want to try this. Will you help us? And then you try it the first time, and you're never going to be perfect first time out of the gate. We're constantly learning. So we got the feedback, tweaked it a little bit, and then we reached out to maybe South Asian PTA members that were members, but they weren't too engaged. We got their feedback, received their suggestions, made some tweaks. And then we started going to South Asian families that were very engaged, but just not in PTA. Maybe they helped the teachers a lot. Maybe they volunteered a lot for certain teachers or different groups on campus. We went to them and asked them, these are our ideas. What do you think? We appreciate and respect your opinion. You are helping us to be better. They would give us their information, their suggestions, we tweak it a little bit. And when we felt comfortable and confident that our South Asian families, the folks that we had reached out to, were supportive of what we were going to try. And in fact, what we were going to try, they actually helped to create and develop. Then we rolled it out to the whole school. Right? So increase your chances of success with this very particular process. And then once you do that and you have success, celebrate your successes and let everybody see that you are making strides to be more inclusive, to be more equitable, and to increase your diversity. You can present it to the school board. You can go to the level of council or your PTA district to say, this is something we've tried, it's worked, we want to share it, okay? And help teach other PTAs.
Excuse me, Marilyn.
Yes.
So there's a question pertaining to what you just talked about in
Okay.
terms of semantics and making it accessible. Do you want to
Yep.
answer that question right now?
Can we wait until the end? Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
thank
So
you.
thank you. So let's move on now. So we're talking about, again, gap analysis, and I want to reiterate, you have to have a goal that you're targeting. You have to have data or information that you are using to measure whether or not you are succeeding in meeting that goal, okay? So that was the first example of membership. Now let's talk about a gap analysis example in leadership. Okay? My friend who is in Florida PTA, in their county, high African American population, but their PTA board didn't reflect that. Their membership didn't reflect that. So what they did is they accessed information for the total county, student demographics, to say, what is the composition of our county population? What is the composition of our students that we serve? Is our leadership reflective of that? And when they found that it wasn't, then they said, okay, our target is we are going to increase the members on our board by 100%. That is very, very ambitious. But they set that goal because they knew it would drive them. And so once they were able to do that, going through the process again that we talked about of looking at your data, deciding what else can you do to gather the richer conversations, doing the interviews, doing the, reaching out to different organizations that maybe have high membership of the targeted group that you want. Maybe not PTA, maybe it is another civic group in your city or state that has really good engagement for the group that you are trying to engage. Go ask them, what do you do? What have you found? What works? What do they like the most? How can we be more successful? So you're already establishing a partnership. PTA doesn't know everything, right? You're gleaning the information and the knowledge from someone else, another group, and you're doing this, setting a partnership, and then also learning from them to be better as a PTA. Okay, so in this situation, what they asked is, okay, in our leadership, why is it important for us to have more diversity and to be representative? And I think you guys probably have the answers. You have your own answers. But if you are a leader of your community, you need to be able to meet the needs of your community. So if your leadership doesn't reflect your community, then you need to ask yourself, are we truly being good leaders and good stewards of what we're trying to do, right? So in your community, every community is rich. It's not just race and ethnicity. There's a variety of diversity that we have to take into account. Right? Reach out to groups, advocacy groups and service groups and civic engagement groups with the disability community, military families, LGBTQ, and you can read it on the screen, so I don't need to read it out to you. But there are other groups that are in your community that you can learn from and you should learn from. PTA shouldn't exist in a silo. We should be one of many groups that serve our communities. And when you have that fluidity and that relationship, not only will PTA become stronger and more diverse, your partnerships with other groups in your community are going to be better. Okay, so let's go back to quantitative data again. Okay, so we had talked about where can you get the information if you, PTA, does not have that information you're seeking. School district can have it. Education department oftentimes have, demographic information, counties, cities, your chamber of commerce, etc. But there are other independent data sources that you can find. Here are two of them: National Center for Education Statistics and greatschools.org. Now, aside from that, if you want to do additional surveys, there's free tools. Google is free, SurveyMonkey is free, Jotform is free. So those are things where you can create your own surveys to decide what is it that we want to find out. Create that survey and then gather the information so that you have data and information to use in terms of creating a goal, setting how you're going to measure it, and then measuring it at the end of your year to see, did what we try work or not? And if it didn't work, why not? Do we want to try it again, or do we need to tweak it and in order for us to make progress? Okay, so let's move on to our third and final example where a gap analysis can be used. Number one, programming. It's not number one, I guess. Our third example is about programming. Okay, so on the screen, you'll see, I'm sure you can fill it out, donuts with, many schools have it, blank day tea, or the blank and blank dance. Very common, very traditional. So how do we work with programming that has been at our school for many, many years? Okay, what are we not asking ourselves? What do we need to ask ourselves? When we have donuts with dads, who are we leaving out? Implicitly or explicitly? When we have Mother's Day teas, who are we leaving out? When we have father-daughter dances, who are we leaving out? And so we go back again to who are we as PTA? I showed you at the very beginning, our position statements are really clear. We are inclusive of all children, all families. And if we are creating programming that excludes some, then we're not staying true to our mission. And so some of the things that you can look at are the mere names of events, just like I showed you, donuts with dads, or father-daughter dance, or Mother's Day tea, right? So the father-daughter dance, yes, I know that it is a tradition, but PTA is inclusive of everybody. So why, what can we do to include everyone so that you can celebrate a special relationship? So instead of a father-daughter dance or a mother-son dance, you can have a VIP dance. And every student gets to decide which very important adult they would like to bring to this special celebration, okay? And that can be my older brother, that can be my grandma, that can be my uncle who's helping my mom, it can be my neighbor who's I've known since I was little, right? Now you are allowing for many more people to be included and not feel like they're othered. Yes, if you have a father-daughter dance and I don't have a father, sure, I could ask, my friend's father, or I'm going to ask, another person. But if the title of the dance is father-daughter dance, you're already automatically excluding some people. So here, I'll show you that you can see UDL, Universal Design for Learning. It's a concept and a methodology in education where instead of creating a lesson for some people and then having to accommodate it or tweak it a little bit for additional people, why don't you create a lesson in a way that allows for everybody to learn together? We can take that concept and apply it to our programming too, okay? So other things to consider: time of the year. If you are having a big event on, let's say, Ramadan, and you know that you have families in your school, that's not going to be the best day to have an event like that, because chances are you won't get participation during the day from someone who's not allowed to eat, not allowed to drink during the day, right? So keep those kind of things in mind, but also, do you have a lot of working parents? If you have things in the middle of the day all the time, if all of your events are in the middle of the day, who are you leaving out? And vice versa. Okay. Cost is something that you want to keep in mind, because even if you say, but it's only $20, whenever there's a cost, you are already introducing a barrier. Right? In PTA, we should have 3 free events for every event that has a cost associated to it. Keep that as a rule of thumb. All right. So one of the things that we often run into when we're talking about programming is that parents don't like it. So in PTA, we really want to honor what's best for our children. We want to include every student, right? Isn't that our tagline? Every child, one voice. So think about it. Is this an issue for adults because they're used to something and they don't want to let go of it? Or is this truly harmful to a student or a kid? Or is it going to be, or can we do better for that student or kid? Let that be our focus, okay? And then I put data down at the bottom because it is so very important. How do you know if your programming is working? How do you know if your programming is inclusive? You have to collect that data. How do you do it? Oops, hold on. Did I miss one? I seem to have dropped a slide. Anyway, so ways to help improve your programming. There are tools at National PTA that you can use. And so here they are. These should be live links. I'm not going to link on them now. Sometimes I can't get back to this, but this will be in your slide deck, and I'll share it with Anvi, and Anvi can share it with all of you. But there's a diversity profile, so you can actually assess your diversity at your school, okay? And then in making changes to become more equitable, to become more inclusive, there's a wonderful facilitator's guide that can help each of you feel more comfortable on what to do and how to do it, okay? And then this is a DEI action plan. It's a template for you to decide what you're going to do. What are the goals that we want to achieve, and how will we get there? So these are fantastic tools that anybody can use. Oops, hold on. Okay. So how do we get all this started? So you've seen 3 different examples. You know that you need to have a goal. You know that you have to have a way to measure that goal. And you know that through this process, you have to be collecting information. Okay. So if you decide, okay, you know what, Marilyn, this makes a lot of sense, and we're going to go for it. We want to do it. All right. So how do you get started? Talk to your board about this idea. You need to get buy-in, obviously, and approval from your board. So part of that is going to be educating them about this process. Gap analysis is not something that every PTA board does. It's a good tool, but you will have to introduce it, talk about it, and lead people through it the first time. Talk with your principal or other people on campus, like your staff liaison, your community liaison, and get them on board as well. Talk to your PTA council and your district about what you plan to do. They may actually have additional resources. They may say, you know what, we're really interested in that. We want to help you. Here's some funds, or here's access to a different person at California State PTA who can guide you and mentor you, etc. Okay. And then also throughout this process, you want to be reaching out to additional groups, not just PTA. You can learn a lot by reaching out to different PTAs at different sites, but you can even learn more when you reach out to different groups that are successful, that are out in your community, that want to partner with us. And then once you have this plan down, once you've got buy-in, you've reached out to your community to tell them what you want to do, and they've given you some feedback, some suggestions, and their support. then you want to hold yourself accountable, and you can say to your membership in your community, this is important to us. Increasing the representation on our leadership board is important to us. So our goal of doing that this year is X, Y, and Z. Now you've put it out there. Now you're going to feel a little bit more responsibility to be accountable to that goal. Okay, so here's some additional resources for you. Membership campaigns, engagement. All right, these are all fantastic in terms of when you are looking at family engagement, programming, etc. You don't have to think of these things on your own. There are a lot of great tools, and you should avail yourself of them as well. Because the situation that you're in, chances are another PTA has been in it, and they've gone through it, and they came out on the other side with some ideas that could save you some time. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave this up there because I did check with Anvi and Leslie, and they said it's okay for me to do some pitches. So the Health and Community Concerns, we have an academy every last Saturday of the month, and it's on Zoom. Anyone can come. There's the link to register. And in September, which is this Saturday at 9 a.m., we are going to have a presentation on Gender Spectrum 101. So PFLAG trainers are going to teach us all about the gender spectrum and how we can be more inclusive and supportive. Secondly, there are grants from National PTA for your programming and things that you want to do at PTA. It's due October 4th, but there's a lot of money and there's usually not enough people who apply. So please, 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 if you have a great idea, you want to try out a new program, here's where you can get some money for that. And then finally, I'm not gonna, if you still have children in school, I promised Leslie that I wouldn't try to recruit anyone away from 10th District to National PTA. But if you are, you've been part of this board and you really are looking to make space for new leaders, here's a way that you can continue to contribute to PTA, and that's as a National PTA committee member. So there's the link if you would like to apply. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay, so Leslie and Anvi, is it okay if I leave this up for just a little bit? I mean, I'm gonna send it out.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before I forget, we do have a survey that it's just a short survey, so please fill it out before you leave. We do have some questions and some comments. Thank you, Marilyn. It's really encouraging for you to address the topics and issues that every PTA or school leader actually encounter, and sometimes we don't have the answer or we don't really know what to do. So it's really helpful in terms of the suggestions that you've given us. Even just the semantics, the wording really makes a big difference. So thank you. There's a question regarding semantics.
Okay.
So in the meeting, would we say both I move to and the accessible one, or could we stick with the accessible one only?
Well, it depends on how your parliamentarian depends on how how strict they are, right? And the training they've received. I mean, I'll tell you as a unit president, I told my board right up from the front, this is how we have to run our meetings. This is the language that we usually use, but I'm going to use this language and this is what it means, right? So it's really going to be up to you, but you will have to record in your minutes the fact that number one, it was discussed, and number two, that it was voted on. So I don't want to get anybody in trouble with PTA. So if, we have to follow parliamentary procedure, then I would do both, right? So that way you're constantly educating people, or maybe you could even say the more accessible language first and say, and for formality's sake, I'm going to say it in the way that it's going to be captured. I move to blah, 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 blah.
Thank you. And I think it's also acceptable to, we do have a lot of members that attend sometimes for the first time, and you're doing business And sometimes they don't understand, why do we have to adopt the financial review? Why do we have to adopt the budget?
Mhm.
And again, you can do the formal I move to, and then also explain the reason we're doing this is because, we need to make sure that the association members approve the expenses and whatever funds that we receive. So again, trying to explain to everybody what the process is really helpful. And I think, I think it should be a common practice for all
Yes.
of our leaders. There's a comment. Thank you for mentioning these gendered exclusive events. Yes, these are infuriating, and she's starting, ha ha ha. Which is, I agree. Sometimes these gender inclusive events are infuriating. So we do need to start addressing those and making sure that we are not excluding anybody. There was another comment from Venita. It says, not to mention cultural and religious values can be very different
Yes.
in various communities. We need to also adjust our meeting, respecting festivals. The flexible we are, the inclusive we can be. I agree.
Thank you.
There was a question regarding, which you already answered, regarding the PowerPoint. If they're going to get a copy of the PowerPoint, and you
Yeah,
did
I'll just
say,
send it to you.
great, okay, and we will send it to everybody. Oops. And are there any more questions or comments? I do have a question regarding doing the interviews or focus groups.
Mhm.
How would you do this without being intrusive? I mean, how would you, let's say I want to do a focus group on the Filipino family community. How would I approach them without them thinking, why do you want to ask all these questions?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. And I think that sometimes we're so afraid of doing the wrong thing that we don't do anything at all. Right. And so if we exhibit cultural humility, which is number one, we don't know everything. I can, no matter how many things I've learned, no matter how many times I've been through, X, Y, and Z, if we come with cultural humility and we say, I'm constantly learning, and I tried this and it didn't work. And if Anvi, I would really appreciate if you would just talk with me for 10 minutes, because I really want to understand and I'm trying my best and I feel like I'm not getting the result that I want. And I think because we want to engage more Filipinos, and you being, part of the culture, it would be really great, and I'd be so appreciative if I could just talk to you for 10 minutes. Would that be okay? Right. So there's a difference in the way that you approach it. I would say if you have somebody on your board that is culturally matched as already an anchor or a representative of that group, I would have them reach out. Otherwise, relationships are fantastic. So start with people that you have a relationship with.
I'm
Or
also,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
Or if you have, if there are community leaders that the community trusts, right? A leader doesn't have to have a formal title, right? You all know on campus, there's always like one or two parents that don't have, quote, a formal title, but people listen to them and they trust what they say. That would be somebody that I would want to have coffee with or tea or do a walk with. And again, if you approach somebody with cultural humility, chances are they'll be receptive to you.
So I'm thinking maybe if you're having a coffee with a PTA in the morning, so make it more informal as opposed to a formal type of
Yes.
meeting. Or, bring it, let's have a dinner get together, bring your favorite food from your country, and we all share. So I think that way you're actually able to interview people in a more informal setting, as opposed to asking them to sit down, with the facing them a desk in between.
You're gonna tape it. No, don't do that. But it can be really, just kind of just relaxed. I mean, and one-on-one sometimes is really great because then people really have that conversation with you one-on-one, so attempt that. And be really mindful of the non-language signals that you're sending. So if I'm going to have, I want to have a chat with someone, I'm not going to show up in a suit, because that says I'm here on business versus, hey, I'm a human and I just kind of want to talk with you about something, right? Or if you are having a drop-in coffee, what music are you playing in the background? Is it a lot of different music, or is it only one kind of music? Right? What does that vibe feel like? Does it match your community? Does it extend who you're trying to reach in your community? Think about those kind of things, because those things matter. Those things matter.
Thank you. I had one question. Oh, yes. You talked about volunteers, community members, parents, caregivers that volunteer a lot, but don't really
Aren't in
get involved
PTA.
with the PTA. Yes.
Mhm.
So how do you pull them in, and how do you explain PTA, or how do you explain the school site council to them, or this other, what is it, the ES, all these
Like
acronyms, the
like
ELAC.
ELAC,
How
or
do you explain to them, you're volunteering a lot, but we also need your voice as parents, because they are looking for parents right now. We're getting emails saying, parents, we need you as, as a school site council leader, as an ELAC leader.
Mhm.
How do you pull them in?
I mean, in my experience, those blanket communications won't get you what you want. It won't. You have to have more targeted outreach and more specific outreach. What I would do is I would find out, okay, the families that are engaged but just not in PTA, who do they trust? Who do they trust on campus? Is it the principal? Is it a teacher? Is it another parent? And then I'm going to go talk to that person and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Can you help me? Can you pair me up? Can you refer me to somebody that you think would be receptive to me asking questions just for information, right? The last thing you want to do is expect people to come to you. Hey, everybody, we really want to be diverse, so please come to our PTA meeting. It'll be here. If you really care about that engagement, you will do above and beyond. You will go to that meeting. Where are they meeting? What are they doing? Are they not part of PTA, but they're always on Tuesday mornings in this person's classroom cutting paper or getting things together? Ask that teacher, hey, can I help on Tuesday morning? Just to help, build that relationship. But relationship building is very important, and it doesn't happen overnight. So if you truly want to build representation, if you truly want to be more inclusive and equitable, expect it to take time. I think sometimes people really shortchange that, but expect it to take time.
Thank you. And I think sometimes if you do have the time, one of the things that I found is that um, I I love to hang out at the parent center, whether it's early in the morning or during lunchtime or after school, and just getting to meet the parents and that are there, that are always hanging out there but don't go to the parent meetings. And then I
Right.
get and then I get to know them. But one of the important things too is that I try to connect with the community rep. I
Mm-hmm.
think the community rep is one of the most pivotal position within the school, because they're the ones that our parents actually go to for help, for assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a good relationship with the community rep, I think that sort of community building, relationship building will start from the parent center, and then hopefully it'll expand. So
Right.
I've learned that.
Yeah. Trusted
Um,
messengers. Who are the trusted messengers? Go through
definitely,
them.
definitely. Whether it's an aide,
Mm-hmm.
even, or even the maintenance workers that are working out there, and the parents know them and
Mm-hmm.
helping out. It's who you connect with in terms of actually, building that relationship, and then again you expand it out. So I
Yeah.
think it's really helpful. Great. We're almost out of time. We have 2 minutes. I do want to thank Daniel Mateos, and Alex.
Thank you.
Alex, I'm going to not say your last name correctly. Alex Zadman. I'm sorry. For our Spanish interpreter and is Alex, and our ASL interpreter is Daniel. Thank you so much for doing the work, doing the very valuable work. And we want to thank Marilyn. Thank you so much for such a very informative and important information. And yes, we will share the slide deck for everybody, and also make sure that you do fill out the survey so that then we can figure out, how best to serve you. We will be providing webinars every month until I think April or May. So let us know, and thank you so much for everybody for attending and joining us. And thank you, everybody, and have a good Tuesday. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.